Good morning, everybody. My name is Priscilla Santos. I'm a PhD candidate in urban studies at ISCTE, the University Institute of Lisbon, and Nova University of Lisbon. Today, I'm going to present a paper co-authored with Daniel Malet Calvo, which is my PhD supervisor, and Jordi Nofre. So in this talk, we will explore the ambivalent role of a grassroots association, which is called MOB, Sirigaita, and its forced displacement from Bairro Alto to Intendente, both nightlife districts in Lisbon. The association's trajectory follows the advancing frontier of urban gentrification in the city and poses the question, are then marginal gentrifiers fighting against gentrification? We've divided this presentation into three parts. In the first, we will very briefly present the theoretical inspirations, objectives, and methodology of this research. In the second section, we introduce the social actors and places of this story, the MOB Sirigaita Association and Bairro Alto and Intendente District. In the final part, we interrelate the displacement and emplacement of the single association to the urban transformations in Lisbon in the last decade. We'll then wrap up by discussing how the association moves between its role as a driver of marginal gentrification and resistor of the forces of urban neoliberalism. So our theoretical approach considers two contrasting perspectives about grassroots associations in the so-called gray zones of the cities. A first and more classical one that looks at grassroots associations as marginal gentrifiers, since they can create a new ambience in their urban zone, potentially pushing the gentrification process forward. The second theoretical line sees grassroots association as cultural and political agitators that bring life and contestation to areas marked by urban deterioration and poverty. In doing so, these organizations create resistance to the gentrification process. This paper draws on documentary research from secondary sources and an exploratory ethnography carried out within the framework of the Geographies of Urban Night, a course held at Nova University of Lisbon, here, and coordinated by Jordi Nofre. Fieldwork was conducted between February and June 2022 and included participant observation and in-depth interviews with key informants of the MOB Sirigaita Association. So let's meet the social actors. MOB is a grassroots anti-capitalist cultural space founded in September 2012 in the nightlife spot of Bairro Alto. MOB suffered an institutional-led forced displacement to Rua dos Anjos, a street near Intendente Square, a less central neighborhood, which at that time was in its initial phase of an urban upgrade. This forced displacement led to the transformation of MOB into the Sirigaita Association, which has emerged as a community-oriented space of struggle for multiple activist causes, such as the right to the city, labor precarization, climate change, feminist struggles, and so on. The association hosts different groups of activists, among them Habita and the Stop Despejos, the main organizations fighting against the house crisis in Lisbon, which is very intense right now. But the regular income of MOB Sirigaita comes from a bar and some night activities, such as concerts and performance. The events can only be attended by members who pay a €3 annual fee and sometimes an extra charge for the performance. All the staff are volunteers. So here, in the right picture, you can see a poster that summarizes Sirigaita's main activities in the new hub in Rua dos Anjos. It says that it's a collective space for activist groups, concerts, parties, debates, and so on. Some place our ideas, it says at the top. In the left picture, you can see a poster of an event to end violence against women that occurred in the former MOB hub in Bairro Alto. The Bairro Alto has historically been a bohemian nightlife district in Lisbon. During the 19th century, local people from different social classes would go to the Bairro Alto for a fight and fun, as stated by Rosa Fina. The 20th century brought a period of urban deterioration and poverty with the rise of criminality in the area. Here you can see a picture of Rua Atalaia in Bairro Alto in 1982, when the nightclub Frágil opened. At the time, the neighborhood had several deteriorating buildings, such as the one on the right of this image. During the 80s, the neighborhood became a scene for the city's counterculture, driven by the LGBT movement and many artists. Here you can see more pictures of Frágil nightclub during the 80s and 90s in the Bairro Alto. This club has since moved to Santa Apolona area and is now called Lux Frágil. Just a curiosity, the hostess in the golden dress, middle picture at the bottom, has followed an activist and political career. Decades later, she was the leader of the local committee of the Arroios district, where Intendente Square is situated, by coincidence or not. Due to a series of urban policies, starting with the 1997 urbanization plan for Bairro Alto and Bica, the neighborhood has been converted from an alternative nightlife spot to a crowded, mainstream, and tourist nightlife destination, as you can see in this image. Going now to Intendente. Intendente was once considered by Lisboners as a no-go zone due to its high rates of drug trafficking and prostitution. This phase lasted until 2011, when the City Council started an urban regeneration initiative in the area. During the regeneration, the mayor's office was moved to the Intendente Square, where there was new policy surveillance to maintain not just the peace, but the new image of the area as a safe and a trendy neighborhood. As part of the urban regeneration plan, Intendente Square became a nightlife destination for the young middle class. Several bars, cafes, and restaurants were opened. Here you can see the terrace of Café Joana, which is now closed, as we're going to see further. Attracting alternative cultural associations was also part of the local authorities' strategy to change the image of the Intendente Square. You can see some promotional images of events in Casa Independente, a cultural association with a bar and a program of night concerts after receiving some funds from the City Council. The urban plan for Intendente Square was successful, but not completely. The drug trafficking and prostitution dynamics spread into adjacent streets. These areas form interstitial, or the so-called gray zones, at the frontiers of areas which are already advanced in the process of urban change. One example is Rua dos Anjos, the street which Mob Sirigaita moved to in 2014, as we will see in the next slide. But before we move on, let's just say something about Rua dos Anjos, where there are still residual dynamics of drug trafficking and prostitution, which nowadays are mixed with small retail outlets owned by migrants, particularly those from the South Asia. So the dislocation of Mob Sirigaita from Bairro Alto to Intendente in 2014 doesn't seem to be a coincidence. As some of its pioneers members tell us, the association was used strategically as a part of a state-led gentrification process in alliance with neoliberal economic force. The political and economic pressure that resulted in mobs' displacement was a combination of three actions. First, restrictions on opening hours. The City Council obliged nocturnal activities to end at midnight, which meant a huge loss in income for the association. Then there was a policy entry to the association during a crowded night with the excuse of checking the closing time, scaring people and damaging the reputation of the place. A rise in the rent for 1,500 to 2,500, which definitely put an end at the Bairro Alto era for Mob. According to one of our interviewees, the Mob building in Bairro Alto was left empty from 2014 at least until June 2022, when our interview took place. In 2014, the choice for Rua dos Anjos as the new location for the association follows the same requirements of its displacement, but the other way around. Less restricted open hours, I think it's here. Less strict open hours, no policy intervention, and last but not least, a rent of 500 euros at that time for a smaller place. Plus, Francisco, one of our interviewees, told us that the City Council representatives recommended them to go to the Intendente area, which was at that time going through the process of urban regeneration. Some interviewees state that Mob Sirigaita never had financial support from the local government, as happened with some of the cultural associations at Intendente Square. In Rua dos Anjos, Sirigaita income still comes from the bar that you can see in the bottom left image, and the DJ sets and concerts, like the one in the top left. There are also movie screenings and book launches, followed by debates, sometimes also accompanied by vegetarian dinners. In the picture on the right, you can see the iconic door of Sirigaita covered with small posters with activist agendas. But since Mob Sirigaita arrived in Rua dos Anjos, the area has changed dramatically. The last brothels and some grassroots associations have disappeared. Local stores were replaced by small businesses serving vegan meals and craft beers. And tourists don't fare crossing the streets at night anymore. The increase of real estate value in the area has been responsible for a series of closures of cafes, bars, and cultural associations. Some of them had opened around the time of the regeneration. Joana's Café, that we've seen in our previous slide, is an example. So here you can see a story. I'm going to translate a little bit because I know most of you don't speak Portuguese. A story published by Público, a Portuguese newspaper, that says that Intendente Square is no longer a bohemian district of Lisbon. Several of its cafes and bars are now closing due to real estate pressure and speculation. The new investments in the area focus on the luxury market. For example, a 5-star Soho House hotel is currently under construction. Casa Independente, the cultural association once supported by the city council that we have seen in previous slides, will be out of the area by 2026, the newspaper states. Now threatened by yet another displacement, Sirigaita, on the one hand, maintained its marginalized position in this rapidly changing city. The association also keeps close contact with the socially excluded population of the Rua dos Anjos area. They continue to house a project to support female drug users and sex professionals who suffered abuse. Some of these women work at the bar or at the feminist bookshop in Sirigaita. On the other hand, the cultural and political activities that take place in Sirigaita have attracted new middle-class visitors, mostly also marginal gentrifiers, both locals and foreigners, to the area, so creating a social class mix that didn't exist before. However, the activists and organizers of Sirigaita seem politically aware of their ambiguous position within the transformation of the district. As Simona, one of our interviewees, says, Sirigaita always struggled against becoming a force for gentrification, but we know we are part of it. So this Friday, Sirigaita is launching an anti-eviction campaign at its hub. The landlord says they need to leave the space in Rua dos Anjos at the beginning of the next year, but the association will create resistance to the new liberalist force. Now to wrap up, in this talk we've looked at Lisbon's urban transformation of the last 10 years through the displacement of organization in two neighborhoods of the city, Bairro Alto and Intendente. We've explored how the association both resists to the force of urban neoliberalism and drives marginal gentrification. Mob Sirigaita contests neoliberalist force by negotiating with the public authorities and local actors, and by hosting multiple activist agendas. However, they also help to attract middle-class people to the area, thus fostering marginal gentrification. We point out the need for new studies into the ambiguous nature of grassroots associations, which will provide insight into how they resist, survive, and/or collaborate in the urban change process. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. My name is Enrico Petrilli. I am an independent researcher from the university. No, I'm an independent researcher, so I'm not from any university. And I'm presenting today with Alberto Vanolo, that is a professor at the University of Turin. I would just beginning to say that I'm really sorry to not be with you in Lisbon and to present online, but that's the way. Today I'm going to talk about a project that I'm now doing with Alberto, that is like a process to think about what's happening to urban night in Turin, but in general, how we can conceptualize what's happening and how it's changing the urban night in a more general sense. To begin, as you already know, academic research have been affected by nyctophobia, night blindness, since the gaze of social scientists have focused almost exclusively on daytime activities. A game changer was the works of historians like Melvin, who connected the dots between modernity, industrialization, and capital expansion in the night. In particular, the diffusion of electricity and street lighting allowed an increase in both surveillance and control measures, and other typical diurnal activities, such as working factories. It is within the studies that Malvin introduced the well-known metaphor of night as a frontier, colonized by the so-called daytime capitalism to increase round-the-clock profit and control. These processes of increased control and profit in the nighttime accelerate thanks to or after the so-called nighttime economy. And thanks to this process, researchers like Galland and Gibson and also Shaw start to criticize the colonial imaginary that is at the base of the frontier and the night colonized by daytime capitalism. Such work suggested to challenge the binary conceptualization that see night and day as opposed, in order to develop a complex and nonlinear understanding exploring how urban night has always been enacted in diurnal processes of economic expansion and social control. To trying to answer to these kind of things, we use the work of this scholar. In 1985, feminist philosopher Nancy Fraser asked provocatively what is critical about critical theory to inspect the gendered blind spot of Jürgen Habermas' theory of communication action. Some decades later, the postcolonial urban scholar Anaya Roy asked in a similar way, what is urban about critical urban theory? Her aim was to deconstruct how urban is conceptualized in urban studies, in attention to its constitutive outside. It's okay? Okay. The constitutive outside is the concept originates in Derrida work about the relation between talking and writing. Derrida takes the outside to be necessary to the constitution of a phenomena, in such a condition of the possibilities of the inside. Applied to urban theory, the concept of constitutive outside requires to provincialize our understanding of urbanization and urban studies. For example, by recognition that the city is just one result of urbanization processes, and most of the urbanization might be considered just one among many processes involving socio-spatial dialectics. Some not known yet by non-urban theory. For example, Roy talked about the not urban, the rural, and so on, the agrarian, and so on. We think it's interesting to apply the concept of constitutive outside to the night, because the constitutive outside become the deconstruct alternative to the fundamental philosophical concept of form essence. So we try to deal with the night without thinking to the night to having an essence. So our aims is to provincialize our understanding of urban night by unpacking the constitutive tension between diurnal and nocturnal in urban context. We ask to ourselves to think the specificity of urban night in a world where urbanization is arguably everywhere and where the nocturnal has been almost fully colonized by the diurnal. Is there any real outside of the urban diurnal nowadays? We take advantage from insight from a urban night in the city of Turin, but we want to stress that our focus is in this paper is not to map the characteristic and problem of this specific city, but to mobilize general question and wide reflection about night and diurnal nowadays. Just a second. So in the different edition of this conference, I
Enrico, can you hear us? Maybe.
giovani town of the visiting Italian automobile manufacturers. And this industrial past affected.
Sorry, we stopped hearing you for a while. Your image froze, so maybe you want to repeat this slide again from the beginning.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And I just thought quickly, maybe I should move it to the audience because it's kind of weird if you're presenting and you don't see the people. What do you prefer? You let me know.
Yeah, at the beginning I didn't have also my image, so it was really weird because I have nothing to say. Thank you.
Well, let me know. I can.
I prefer the audience. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So yeah, please start again this slide.
Okay, sorry. So adopting a diurnal gaze, Turin can be described as a city with a strong industrial heritage. Like Detroit, Turin was the one company town of the biggest Italian automobile manufacturer. And this industrial past affected Turin nightscapes. So in the 80s, the times of everyday life was still marked by the rhythm of the factory. So the day was the time of the work, and the night was the time of the rest. But this situation changed a lot in the 90s, and the recreational nocturnal activities mushroom everywhere in the city, and we have a polycentric nocturnal playscapes. While since the next decade, we see a progressive centralization and normalization of Turin, and also a strong securitization against many nightclubs. So we see the rise of a discursive normative dimension that emerged in the public debate by distinguishing between what is called in Italy movida, educated middle-class consumer drinking quite in bars, against a mala movida, so that we could be translated as mad movida, in which generally include an indisciplined and problematic form of recreation, and particularly nocturnal activities in public spaces. What is interesting in the last year, that after the COVID pandemic, is that there is a future increase in control, but also we have project as tonight, that is a project that willing to increase the quality of the Dora waterfront during the evening and the night. Tonight, initiative, its aims was to challenge the perceived insecurity of the area by mixing securitarian approaches, regeneration dreams, and generic community building initiative. This kind of project have a kind of caricatural idea of what evening and night is. The evening commercial activities such as cafe and restaurant were considered welcomed because they increased security, while other kind of activities like ethnic shop and clubs were potential source of problems. If this is the general Turin playscape and the way to control it, what we tried is to map other kind of nights in Turin, because clubs, pubs, and bars are just part of what we constitute of the urban nights. This is a banal statement, but it's important to underline the capitalist bias, the conventional understanding of the urban night. So we try to, through interview, to try to map the diverse nocturnal presence in our town. Here we present a list of different night spaces, and we have nocturnal sex space that include both indoor venues like saunas, winger clubs, or public play, or nocturnal sex space in public spaces like the place where sex workers work, or cruising area. We have night walking with dogs that with their different sociability compared to the days. We have bingos and betting shops that usually are in the peripheral area. We have the new nocturnal urban infrastructure of the city that is made of emergency room, police station, and so on. We have the demosting setting that we have to consider when we think and we work about the nocturnal. Dealing with these different and other nocturnal nights, we want to present two interesting cases that arise in our studio. The first was connected to the area of the Tonight project, it's the Lungodora area. where there were some benches that were removed in the beginning of April 2021. There were public benches that was removed because they were attacked to be responsible of attracting drug dealers and Neiva drinkers. More particularly, they were used as gathering spares for immigrants, and the removal of the benches, together with the policies supporting local bars, clears to promoting a social change in the area. Racialized imaginaries overlap with the comic vision, clearly reproducing form of criminalization of the poverty, as people spending the night in the trendy restaurant are considered better and more positive from the area compared with people that just want to stay on the benches and talking and having fun in the public spaces. At the end of April, some residents put in an autonomous way chair and others sitting in the area. This example shows us how there are conflicting use of public spaces, but most of all, there are willingness to use public spaces also during the night, and also that some part of the population still want to use the night in a formal way. While in another part of the city, this way of the use in a formal way, the night seems vanished. Another case interesting is the Lumini case. Is in the northeastern part of the city, in a public park right next to the monumental cemetery. There is this area that's called Lumini, which means small lights, because when you are in the park, you can spot the light of the cemetery. This area is not much populated during the day, and the evening and during the night is an historical hub for cruising. In there it is possible to meet other people searching for occasional set, and rarely sex is performed in the very same place. Cruising is facilitated both by the material characteristic of the area, being a vast, dark, and deserted park, and also by its nocturnal atmospheres, which seems to suggest that other logics, practice, and counter sociability identities are possible compared to today. During the peak, what is interesting for us is that during the peak or after the peak of the COVID-19 pandemics, the area became the space of free non-commercial parties, and but it was a problem because this party make less possible to the people that frequent the cruising area to have sex, because too many people to make any attention were in the area. And more recently, when the non-commercial party stopped to be held in the area, thanks to the Tonight Project support, a small bar became making more party, more initiative in the area, and so again it was more difficult for our interview to engage in public sex in the area. So what's interesting to us is to see how different conception and different way to perform night in a peripheral area come to again to have clash and to have show how there are different conception and different interesting connected to the night. So what we are trying to develop with our work is to show how it is the ongoing governance of the night in Turin testify a progressive erosion of what we call metaphorically as a dark night, as the nocturnal, which means the erosion of the alterity of the night in an attempt to make the nocturnal more secure and more profitable. But there is a conceptual clash at play, because 20-hour sit reduce the possibility of the urban night, but this does not mean that the nocturnal and the diurnal has to be framed as binary elements in a conflict relation, since the night is not always an absolute fact. The nocturnal are formed in complex entanglement and material discourses, practices, and atmospheres. Night is not what is commonly considered as nocturnal, but there is a clearly other elements at play, as for example, in a certain practice that take form easily at night and they are not so easily during the day. as for example, the dogs that are running in a park without leash, or the people having sex in public park. The diurnal lie in attention of the constitutive outside of the nocturnal, not simply because it involved a relation of alterity with the nocturnal, but because the nocturnal became a condition of emergency, an outside that being inside a creative and relation with the night. What we propose is not just to call for further analysis reflecting how the urban night is changing, but to develop a nocturnal gaze, which means trying to develop conceptual stance from the inside of the nocturnal. For example, the fact that a large part of research article in night studies focus on commercial activities, residential processes, security measures. All this interesting tell something about the importance of the diurnal gaze in our field of research. Thank you.
My name is Pawlusiński, and me and my colleague from Krakow, Magdalena Kubal-Czerwińska, would like to present you some remarks about nighttime economy in Krakow. We've just presented 2 times some information about changes in the whole city. Today we try to show you something about the main square in the city. I would like to apologize for my English is not perfect, so Magda is better support by try to practice to get better. So if I have any problems with communication, Magda will help me. Okay, so how to start? The same like from Turin. In 1990s, everything has changed in Central European. What has changed? First, the new rules of economy appeared. In communist period, we had mostly public ownership. After 1990, we start to reprivatize most assets. For example, buildings. We are looking for old owners in cities like Krakow, where there was a strong problems with during the Second War. We don't have very often. We couldn't find the owner of the building. So in 90s everything started to change, and one of the most important question was how to monetize these assets which we have in the city. So people were looking new initiatives to earn money, and one of them was tourism. Because Krakow is a capital culture of Poland. It's a city with a very strong heritage, well known abroad, and if you ask any Polish guys where he want to go to first excursion, most of them say Krakow, and this is a very popular city. But in the beginning of the 21st century, the number of tourists from abroad after the low-cost flights and when we joined the European Union, most of tourists from western part of Europe arrived in Krakow. So the tourist business start to give them some offers. What it was, most of the offers was connected with cheap economy, so I say. So it was a cheap entertainment, and we saw that our city is changing in the night, from the night culture to really nighttime economy. And this is the paper who gives me. It was very important for me because I saw that we can start to study the changes which we observed. So the area of Old Town became for us a small laboratory of changes. What creates nighttime economy? We are geographers, so we want to analyze problems in geographical perspectives. When we discuss about nighttime economy, we have to remember that it is created by three aspects. First one is connected with something what we call a nocturnal landscape. This is different here and different in Poland. In Poland, nights sometimes mean dark and cold. In Mediterranean zone, nights means warm and pleasure. So we have different night landscape. The second one is night culture. In the Mediterranean zone, culture and night means rest, pleasure. In Western part, night culture means also protests, because when we want to fight against something, we collect together in the night. Yeah, so the night is not only the pleasure, but it's a night, the time for any new initiatives, political too. So our night culture is very complicated. And the third aspect is nighttime activities. So each area has its own nighttime activities, its social services, and so on. And these three parts creates night business. It can be connected with the pleasure, but it can be connected with other demand. And this nighttime economy, all of this business, can be done in three types of areas, or maybe more. But first one is historic quarters of the city. This is connected with one of groups of city users. The second areas, this is sometimes we tell about it. It's a temporary space because it works for the short period, and after that period, it's renovated, and sometimes the new functions are there. The third one is a recreational area, but recreational area in our climate is something different than areas near the TAC in Lisbon or near any Italian city, for example. And when we discuss about when we go down, we can find the small areas in the city, for example, and we can analyze the squares. We can analyze the streets, squares, waterfronts, museums, cinemas, and so on. There's plenty of these places. We would like to, in this presentation, show you the problems of nighttime economy in historic quarters and the one of the city square. Why the main square is important for us? Because when you ask somebody about the city, most of people have first feel with the main square in the cities. This is something what means heart of the city. This have symbolic value, so it should be protected because it's ours and we must protect it. In the second hand, this is of course a marketing brand, something what you can use for promotion. And of course, there are plenty of monuments, but not everywhere, because in cities after the second, who was destroyed during the Second World War, they are not historical monuments, they are just fakes for tourists. For example, Gdańsk in Warsaw, they are rebuilt after the Second War. And these monuments is something what must be seen by tourists, and of course this place means the areas to gather not only for the pleasure but to protest and so on. In the first page when I saw the article, there was written that for geographers are important to explain how the squares, how these areas are produced at night, used, experienced, and regulated. And I try to say you some general remarks about Krakow's main square in the concept of city rhythm. So the city works in the rhythms, daily activities, and then we find in this area night activities. So everything is changing. But these activities and this rhythm is connected with groups of city users. So to whom the night offers is produced. So this slide shows 4 main groups of city users, but in Krakow, I can say you that till the beginning of the 21st century, the main group of city users were residents. Everything was for them. They loved, rynek główny, it is for me better to say the main square. They met there every weekend. They crossed it every day during the day. So it was a very important. When we started to, when the tourists became much more important for business in main market in Krakow, the residents went to other districts in the night, and everything was prepared for tourists. This group creates something what Jordi called touristification of the night. So the night culture in Krakow has changed. Everything was prepared for tourists, and during the I will show this picture. This map shows this is the area of main market. This map shows all gastronomic facilities in old city in Krakow. The orange point shows the facilities who were closed during the COVID, because in Poland there was no act that everything must be closed. They could work, but they had to offer it outside. And it shows that most of these facilities, these units were closed, the orange closed. The green one shows that it worked, but with offer outside. And when what it showed, we saw during the COVID period that inhabitants don't want to come back to the central city. They choose other districts in the city because we are not typical. Sometimes we have not typical behavior like others. We have in Krakow during the COVID, we had about 20-25 pubs who were open for during the COVID, and you have to sign the agreement that you go there to try vodka or something to eat, and you are not customer, but you are not how to say, you are a tester. You're a tester, yeah? And so nightlife was working during that period, but no one from the local community was going to the main square market. So, and the restaurants owners and the pubs owners from this area start to talking about it. So we are not attractive for locals. It's a big problem. Everything is prepared for tourists. This is a typical tourist zone. Everything we want to change for something what is very colorful, we try to do the beauty Krakow main square market, but it's not so easy. But some words about the old town market in Krakow. This is some of us say that it's the biggest medieval market in Europe. This is a big area. It's 4 hectares. There's no many buildings in this place. Just only the clothing hall and the tower of one tower and this church, one of the important churches in Krakow. But the area is big, but practically now it's uninhabited. There's no local persons. Most of them are out of the old city. It's connected with economy, because when you have the flats in the main market, you can sell it or you can rent it for tourists. And when you are renting it for tourists, you can build your own house near the center. So there's paradoxically, we don't have public ownership in the old city in Krakow when we discuss about flats. Mostly these buildings are private. We have public ownership connected with churches, with public institutions like schools, universities, and so on, but most flats are private. In this area, yearly, is 14 million persons, because Krakow is visited by 14 million tourists from abroad and domestic tourists. Most of them are from Poland. There are about 3-4 million tourists from abroad, but now this number went down. In 2022, there's we estimate it is about 8 million tourists in the whole group, but just only about 500,000 of tourists from abroad. In this area, we have about 40 restaurants and pubs. When you collect each building, you can see on this side there are no umbrellas, and there's about 4,000 places for customers. So this is important aspect. And how it going during the year? I would like to show you some annual rhythm and some daily rhythm. When you discuss about night culture and landscape in Central Europe, you have to start discussion about, of course, the night time during the summer. It's very attractive. It's not so hot. Everything is open, and the night light landscape is really very beautiful. It's a picturesque area. Sometimes we love to say that this area looks like in New York, because during the day and during the night is the same numbers of tourists. But the most important during the summer period are festivals. But example, we have some initiatives which gives opportunities to visit. There's night of theater, night of jazz, night of churches, night of museums, but they are just only 1 day's placards from 2023, the information. But the most picturesque is the night, because our night is connected to the snow. And what the attracted last year Christmas marked on the main square market. It's really it looked like you see. This is the product of the whole Central Europe. We are going to the Vienna, München, Nuremberg, Berlin. So the Christmas market are the most attractive offers for the night, and but the gastronomy and others, these pictures from the night too, is working. But of course we have autumn when the area is not attractive and everything must be organized inside. So different between the night in here and in Poland. The summer, everyone wants to go out, but during the other the other part of the year, everything is going inside the ocas. Okay, so Magda showed me that I have to finish. Daily problems. When the tourists started to visiting Krakow, they bring some new products. Of course, Polish guys love drink vodka. We spent plenty of time, 3 times in pubs, but we don't drink in English style. Yeah? Please, people in Eastern Europe can drink much more. Yeah? They try frequently. But this offer was something new to Polish guys. You don't believe, but in 2002, 2003, there were excursions from Warsaw to Krakow to visit pubs and bars, because the nightlife in Warsaw was such attractive like in Krakow. So not only tourists from abroad, but tourists from Poland came to visit these pubs. And in the first period, the main square market and the area of the old town was the most visited areas for night tourists in Krakow. So we start to say that everything is working, is still on because when I showed this picture. This is a concept, marketing concept. This means drink vodka and beer. You can see the concept, the price. 1 glass costs €1. And everyone in Poland was shocked that we can go there, but it was very attractive for especially young people from abroad. And this concept in Krakow, it was not local. It was not on the same in the main market, but next to. But in some towns like Wrocław, Poznań, these bars were located in the main markets, and it became a symbol of the cities. These cities. In Krakow, we had other problems in the new and the final one with stag parties and crawling. The pubs which are going in these initiatives are not in the main square, but this place is so important for everyone that each from this group start or finish on the main market. So it's very noisy. And what is the problem of it? Because most of these initiatives are prepared by people from abroad. It's not Krakow business. Okay, so let's finish. And so we started to discuss about about these problems. And what I have to tell you, we try to stop it. We look at Amsterdam and we find the night guards, and we try to do it in Poland, but the COVID came and we have to change it. And this became something like tourist information, not to solve the night problems, but we really try to do something. You can see that nighttime economy is one of the most important problems for tourists. What do we start? We start the same, like in Turin, we start process of limitization. So there's a prohibition of selling alcohol in the shops. You can't buy the alcohol in the whole Krakow after the midnight. We start to closing earlier the cafe gardens too, and in the main square it's about midnight too. We have the city helpers, and we have the law. This is a culture park law. What allow us to organize this area, but still we don't have a night major or someone who can manage this area. So when you to conclusions, the main areas of the cities are very interesting laboratory for the nighttime economy development, but this laboratory must be governed. So the limitation of some activities in this area is very important, and we in Krakow and other cities we discussed that we need a nighttime policy for cities, and we'll see what it will be, but we are discussing about it. Thank you very much. Sorry for my English.
Thank you very much, Malet and Magdalena. So now we move on to the last presentation of this table. I'd like to invite presentation on Hamburg, St. Pauli.
Sorry, Manuel is not participating. I woke up very early, it seems. If we can now say that you cannot participate.
Okay, so then we did have more time in this table. Oh, perfect. Well, then let me just grab my notes. I wasn't prepared for this. So then, I would like to open the floor for questions and comments. Of course, I took some notes, but I would like to invite first the people who are present to ask their questions to any of the presenters. I can also write them in the chat. So,
I think it's still shared. The presentation is still shared.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.